I 32 thought I had my life perfectly planned out, right down to the day I'd retire from the Charleston Museum of Natural History. My fiancée Maggie 29 just blew up everything with 8 words that I still can't wrap my head around. Don't ask me who the father is, Qley. So I quietly started making preparations to call off our society wedding while maintaining a facade of normalcy. Charleston old money doesn't air its dirty laundry, but that doesn't mean I'm going to marry someone who can't even tell me if I'm the father of her child. I'm a curator with a PhD in anthropology, so I naturally approach problems methodically. Let me lay out the situation chronologically so you can understand how I ended up in this nightmare. Magnolia, Maggie, Thornfield, and I have been engaged for 3 months, together for 2 years before that. We're both from established Charleston families, though hers is new money, only 3 generations of wealth. Our engagement was announced in the Charleston Society pages, and we've been planning a fall wedding at one of the historic plantations outside the city. Both families are heavily involved, deposits have been paid, and invitations are being designed. 2 weeks ago, Maggie told me she was pregnant. I was surprised but genuinely happy. We had discussed starting a family after marriage, but this just accelerated our timeline. I started mentally converting my home office into a nursery, researching the best schools and planning college savings accounts. That's who I am. I plan things. 4 days later, I was looking over our calendar to schedule her first prenatal appointment when something occurred to me. Based on her timeline, conception would have happened during the week I was in Virginia for an archaeological conference. I was gone for 9 days, and we hadn't been together for about 5 days before I left due to our schedules. I mentioned this to Maggie casually over dinner, just asking if she might have miscalculated the date. What happened next still doesn't make sense. She put down her fork, looked me directly in the eyes, and said, "Being pregnant is exhausting enough, Qley. Don't ask me who the father is." I'm a logical person. I pride myself on my ability to analyze situations objectively, but this statement defies all logic. There's only one reason a woman would say that to her fiancé. When I asked her to explain what she meant, she started crying and said her hormones were making her emotional and that I was attacking her during a vulnerable time. She stormed out of the dining room and locked herself in our guest bedroom for the night. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She showed me swatches for the wedding invitations and asked my opinion on flowers. When I tried to bring up our conversation, she said, "I was tired and you were pressuring me. Can we please focus on the wedding?" I'm at a complete loss. Our families are excited about both the wedding and the baby. Deposits have been paid. Announcements have been made. In Charleston society, reputation is everything. If I call this off, there will be questions and gossip. If I stay, I might be raising another man's child with a woman who clearly doesn't respect me enough to be honest. My best friend Sterling, who is also my lawyer, is the only person I've told. He advised me to quietly revise the prenuptial agreement to address paternity issues and suggested a private investigator. But he also warned me that Charleston is a small town and secrets rarely stay secret. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to demand a paternity test immediately. Part of me wants to quietly exit this relationship with as little scandal as possible. And a small, pathetic part of me wants to pretend I never heard those 8 words and proceed with the life I had so carefully planned. Has anyone else faced something like this? What should my next move be? Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since my last post, and I appreciate all the advice and support. Many of you suggested I confront Maggie directly or demand a paternity test immediately. I wish it were that simple, but Charleston high society operates differently. Confrontation isn't our primary method of handling conflict, especially when family reputations are at stake. For those who asked why I care about social standing, my family has been in Charleston for 7 generations. Our name is associated with educational endowments, historical preservation, and charitable foundations. My actions don't just reflect on me, but on a legacy larger than myself. It may sound antiquated to some, but it's the reality I live in. Wedding planning has continued as if nothing is wrong. Maggie chose the invitations, cream cardstock with gold embossing, if you're curious, and we have tastings scheduled with caterers next week. Her mother calls daily with questions about the guest list and seating arrangements. Meanwhile, I'm living in a fog of disbelief. I've tried to bring up the pregnancy several times, asking about prenatal vitamins or doctor's appointments. Each time, Maggie skillfully changes the subject or says she's handling it. When I specifically asked to attend her first doctor's appointment, she said the examination room would be too crowded, and she'd prefer to go alone. When I persisted, she accused me of not trusting her to manage her own health care. Sterling and I met for drinks at his club last week. He explained my options from a legal perspective. "Qley, there are 3 paths here," he said, carefully keeping his voice low despite us being in a private room. 1, you proceed with the wedding but with a modified prenup that addresses paternity. 2, you postpone the wedding until after the birth and paternity test. Or 3, you end the engagement now. When I asked what he would do, he looked at his bourbon for a long time before answering. If it were me. I'd want to know the truth before making any decisions, but getting that truth might be complicated, especially with Maggie's family connections. He was right about that. Maggie's father sits on the board of several major businesses in Charleston. Her family's donations have built hospital wings and university buildings. They can make life difficult for anyone who crosses them. Still, I needed more information before making a decision. I've started keeping a detailed journal of all our conversations about the pregnancy. I've also noted that Maggie has been on her phone more than usual, often stepping out onto the veranda to take calls. She's changed her password recently too. I noticed when she was entering it while we sat together at breakfast. Yesterday, I had an unexpected encounter with Maggie's sister, Qley. She's a pediatric nurse and was always the more practical of the Thornfield sisters. We ran into each other at the coffee shop near the hospital. "How are you holding up?" she asked after we exchanged pleasantries. "With wedding planning, it's keeping me busy," I replied cautiously. She gave me a strange look. "That's not what I meant." Before she could elaborate, her phone rang. She apologized, said it was the hospital and had to leave. But her expression has been haunting me. It seemed like a mixture of pity and concern, as if she knows something I don't. I've also noticed some strange coincidences. Our wedding photographer, Devin Hartley, has been unusually involved in the planning process. Maggie has had several consultations with him about engagement photos and wedding day logistics. When I mentioned that most photographers don't need that much preparation, she said he's a perfectionist who likes to understand the emotional narrative of his subjects. Devin is in his late 20s, artistic, with that deliberately disheveled look that passes for style these days. Not someone I would typically associate with, but Maggie was adamant about hiring him after seeing his portfolio. I've caught myself going through worst-case scenarios in my mind. If the baby isn't mine, who could the father be? Someone from her social circle, a client from her interior design business, or someone closer to our relationship than I want to contemplate. The prenuptial agreement modifications are ready. Sterling included provisions about paternity testing and financial obligations regarding children. When I present this to Maggie, I anticipate it will force the conversation we need to have. But I'm waiting for the right moment, after her parents' anniversary party this weekend. No need to create tension before a family event. In the meantime, I'm preparing myself for all possibilities. I've reviewed our joint finances and made some discreet arrangements to protect my personal assets. I've also started individual therapy sessions, telling everyone there to manage pre-wedding stress. My therapist is the only other person besides Sterling who knows the full situation. The hardest part is maintaining appearances. At a dinner party last weekend, Maggie's mother made a toast to us and the next generation of Charleston society. I smiled and raised my glass while feeling like an imposter in my own life. Maggie squeezed my hand under the table, and I couldn't tell if it was affection or a warning to keep playing along. I keep coming back to those 8 words. There's only one reason she would tell me not to ask about paternity, because she knows there's a real possibility I'm not the father. The question now is whether I can continue in this relationship without the truth, and what obtaining that truth might cost me socially, financially, and emotionally. I'll update after I present the revised prenup and see her reaction. That conversation should tell me everything I need to know about how to proceed. Thank you for listening. In my professional life, I categorize and analyze historical artifacts with detachment and precision. I never imagined I'd be trying to apply those same skills to my own relationship, attempting to piece together the truth from fragments of conversations and inconsistent behavior. Edit. Many have asked why I don't just demand a paternity test now. The pregnancy is still very early, and non-invasive paternity tests carry risks. Also, forcing the issue could push her to make decisions that complicate matters legally. Sterling advised patience while we gather more information. Update 2. I was going to wait until after I presented the revised prenup to update, but something happened yesterday that changed everything. I now know who the potential father is, and it's somehow both worse and more obvious than I imagined. Devin Hartley, our wedding photographer. The revelation came from an unexpected source. After my last update, I reached out to Qley, Maggie's sister, asking if we could meet for coffee to continue our previous conversation. She initially hesitated but agreed to meet at a quiet cafe outside of Charleston, away from prying eyes. "I've been wrestling with whether to tell you this," she began, her hands wrapped tightly around her mug. "Maggie is my sister, but what she's doing to you isn't right." Qley explained that about 3 months ago, Maggie had called her in tears, confessing to a mistake with Devin. This happened during the exact week I was in Virginia for my archaeological conference. According to Qley, Maggie had gone to Devin's studio to review portfolios from other weddings he had photographed. One thing led to another, and she claimed it was a one-time thing, Qley continued. She said she was confused about her feelings about getting married. She convinced herself it was just pre-wedding jitters that manifested in a terrible way. I sat there, trying to process this information while maintaining my composure. In public places, Charleston gentlemen don't raise their voices or show distress. We save our reactions for private moments. "Has she told you anything about the pregnancy?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Qley looked down. "She told me she wasn't sure about the timing, but she was hoping it was yours. When she found out she was pregnant, she called me panicking. I told her she needed to be honest with you, but instead, she told me not to ask who the father was," I finished. "She's terrified of losing everything," Qley said. "The wedding, your family's approval, her standing in Charleston society. Our parents would be devastated by a scandal. Dad's just secured a position on the Historical Preservation Board, and Mom's co-chairing the Heritage Foundation Gala." I thanked Qley for her honesty and assured her I wouldn't mention our conversation to anyone. As we were leaving, she touched my arm. "For what it's worth, Gray, I've always thought you deserved better than my sister. You're a good man." I drove home in a strange state of clarity. The puzzle pieces were fitting together. Maggie's strange comment, her refusal to let me attend doctor's appointments, her multiple consultations with Devin, the timing of the pregnancy. I felt simultaneously enlightened and foolish. How had I not seen this sooner? When I arrived home, I made a decision. Instead of confrontation, I would gather more evidence. Maggie was out at a bridal luncheon, so I took the opportunity to look through our shared calendar on the home computer. Sure enough, there were multiple appointments with DH Studios, during times she had told me she was meeting clients or having lunch with friends. These coincided perfectly with my business trips and late nights at the museum. I then did something I'm not proud of but felt necessary under the circumstances. I checked our phone records. There were dozens of calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize, most occurring during my absence. A quick search confirmed it was Devin's studio number. The final confirmation came when I reviewed our credit card statements. Maggie had made several charges at restaurants and hotels in nearby Savannah, places we had never visited together, on dates when I was traveling for work. I was sitting at my desk, surrounded by this evidence, when Maggie came home. She seemed in high spirits, talking animatedly about wedding cake samples and floral arrangements. The disconnect between her enthusiastic wedding planning and what I now knew was jarring. "We need to talk," I said quietly when she paused for breath. Her expression changed immediately, wariness replacing excitement. "About what?" "About Devin Hartley." The color drained from her face. She sat down heavily on the sofa across from me. What about him? I know, Maggie. I kept my voice calm, controlled. I know about the affair. I know it happened while I was in Virginia, and I know the baby might be his. She didn't deny it. Instead, she burst into tears, not the controlled, delicate weeping of a Southern belle, but ugly, racking sobs. It was a mistake, she gasped between sobs. I was confused. It didn't mean anything. And the baby? I asked, still maintaining my composure. I don't know, she admitted. I really don't know, Qley. I was hoping. I was praying it was yours. Is that why you told me not to ask who the father was? Because you don't know, she nodded miserably. I thought if I just proceeded like it was yours, maybe it would be, maybe we could still have our perfect life. Our perfect life wouldn't be built on lies, I said. I need a paternity test. At this, she looked up sharply. No, no tests. The stress could harm the baby. We can do it after the birth. After we're already married, you mean? We don't have to wait until after the wedding, she said quickly. We could postpone, tell everyone I'm having complications and need rest. And if the baby is Devon's, what then? She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, calculating, almost cold. No one would have to know. We could raise the child as ours. This doesn't have to ruin everything we've planned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was suggesting we proceed with our life together knowing the child might not be mine, keeping up appearances at all costs. Does Devon know about the pregnancy? I asked. Her hesitation told me everything. He suspects, she finally admitted. He's been asking questions. That's why we've had so many consultations. He's threatening to tell you if I don't. So our wedding photographer is blackmailing you, and your solution was to marry me anyway and hope for the best. She flinched at my phrasing but didn't deny it. I love you, Qley. I made a terrible mistake, but I still want our life together. I stood up, needing physical distance. I need time to think. I'm going to stay at Sterling's tonight. As I packed a bag, Maggie followed me around, alternating between tears and rationalizations. It would destroy both our families, she kept saying. Think about your mother, your position at the museum, what people would say. Before I left, she grabbed my arm. Please, Qley, we can fix this. Whatever you need, counseling, time, anything, just don't throw away everything we've built. I looked at her, this woman I thought I knew. You already did that, I said quietly and left. I've been at Sterling's for 2 days now. He's been a tremendous support, offering legal advice and friendship without judgment. We're exploring my options for ending the engagement with minimal scandal. It's complicated by the pregnancy and the societal expectations of Charleston. The irony isn't lost on me. I've spent my career preserving history, ensuring accurate records of the past are maintained for future generations. Now I'm considering participating in a falsehood that would affect not just my life, but potentially a child's. Sterling has advised against direct confrontation with Devon. Let's handle this legally and cleanly, he said. No need to create more drama than necessary. I'm meeting with Maggie and our families tomorrow to discuss postponing the wedding. It's the first step in what will likely be a difficult extraction from this situation. I haven't decided yet whether to tell our parents the truth or allow Maggie to save face with a more palatable explanation. Either way, I know I can't marry her. Not now, not knowing what I know. I'll update after the family meeting. Thank you all for your support during this ordeal. It helps to know I'm not alone, even if I feel that way in the suffocating politeness of Charleston society. Final update. It's been 3 months since my last update, and I apologize for the delay. I needed time to process everything and establish my new normal before sharing the conclusion of this story. The family meeting I mentioned in my previous update was as difficult as anticipated. I decided to take the high road and allow Maggie to save face publicly. We told our families we were postponing the wedding due to incompatible life goals that recently came to light. This vague explanation raised eyebrows, but no one pressed for details, at least not in my presence. Maggie's parents were visibly disappointed but maintained their composure. My mother, always perceptive, pulled me aside afterward and simply said, "Whatever the real reason, I trust your judgment." That quiet support meant everything to me. Privately, I made it clear to Maggie that the engagement was not postponed but ended. I requested my grandmother's ring back, which she returned without argument. I also made it clear that I would not be publicly discussing the real reasons for our separation, but that I expected her to handle the paternity situation with honesty moving forward. The financial consequences were substantial. We lost deposits on the venue, catering, flowers, and ironically, photography. I insisted on covering these costs myself, despite Sterling's objections that we could potentially recoup some from Maggie's family given the circumstances. Taking the financial hit seemed preferable to prolonging any connection. The social aftermath was what you might expect in a town like Charleston. There were whispers, speculative glances, and the occasional direct question disguised as concern. I maintained the incompatible life goals narrative, neither confirming nor denying the rumors that inevitably circulated. My position at the museum remained secure. The board values discretion above all else, and I had always kept my professional life impeccable. As for Maggie and Devin, they remained in Charleston for about a month after our separation before relocating to Atlanta. I learned through mutual acquaintances that they had a small, private wedding ceremony shortly before the baby was born, a girl, delivered 6 weeks ago. I haven't seen the child, but I've heard from reliable sources that she bears a striking resemblance to Devin, confirming what we all suspected about the paternity. In a way, that clarity brings relief. There's no lingering question of what might have been. Qley reached out recently to thank me for handling the situation with dignity. She mentioned that her parents have barely spoken of Maggie since the move, focusing instead on their social obligations and Qley's recent promotion at the hospital. Southern families have a remarkable ability to compartmentalize uncomfortable truths. As for me, I've thrown myself into my work. The museum is preparing a significant exhibition on colonial trade routes, which has kept me productively occupied. I've also been accepted to a prestigious research fellowship in England beginning next spring, an opportunity I wouldn't have pursued had I still been planning a life with Maggie. Sterling remains an invaluable friend. He's the one who encouraged me to write this final update, suggesting it might provide closure. "You've carried this burden of dignity long enough," he said during one of our regular dinners. "At some point you have to lay it down and move forward." He's right, of course. Taking the high road protected everyone's dignity, Maggie's, her family's, even Devin's to some extent, but it came at the cost of the future I had so carefully planned. The most difficult adjustment has been to the uncertainty I now face. I've always been someone who plans meticulously, who knows exactly where life is heading. Now I find myself improvising day by day, and surprisingly, finding value in that flexibility. There's a certain freedom in releasing the expectation of perfect control. I still believe in the importance of dignity and discretion, values instilled by generations of my family. But I've learned that protecting everyone else's reputation shouldn't come at the expense of my own happiness. Sometimes taking the high road means walking it alone, but that doesn't mean you have to walk it forever. For those who asked if there's someone new in my life, no, not yet. I'm taking time to rediscover who I am outside of the life I had planned with Maggie. When I'm ready to trust again, I'll be looking for authenticity over appearances, substance over social standing. Looking back, I realized that Maggie and I were compatible on paper but fundamentally misaligned in values. She was raised to preserve appearances at all costs. I was raised to believe that integrity matters more than perception. In the end, we both acted according to those principles. She by trying to maintain the perfect facade, and I by walking away from it.